title of this talk is Metaverse 2.0, Informational, Social, and Cognitive Heart of the Coming Transhumanist Revolution. So let's get started. All right, so what we do, we practice, our little organization, you see our little J curve up there in the corner, we practice technology foresight with regard to things that go faster every year, which are information and communication technologies and the data they produce, right? We can measure exponential increase in those things. They deliver threshold new capacities, which allow all kinds of interesting emergences to bubble into our world. We think that you can look at change from the perspective of evolutionary choices that we have, things that we're creating unpredictably, randomly, stochastically, the way evolution does. If you remember Stephen Jay Gould and structural evolutionary theory. But there's also developmental constraints that we're stuck within. You can't get out of the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, sorry. You can't get out of these futures that physicists can already tell us. You know, classical mechanics, we know roughly what the orbits and positions of all these planets are going to be far into the future. Now, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of foresight in lots of areas with regard to the universe, but we do in some areas so stunningly good that we think, oh, there's got to be developmental laws for how long-range biology changes. There's got to be developmental laws for social systems, developmental laws for technology, right? And I'm one of the people who believes they're there, and so I'm looking hard for them, right? And some of the trends that I think are intrinsic to the future of complex systems, here's 5 words for you: accelerating intelligence, interdependence, immunity, autonomy, and intimacy with our technologies. I think we can measure all those, and we're just going to continue to see more of them. Okay. I'm at this beautiful university in Tempe, Phoenix, called the University of Advancing Technology. Beautiful name. Their mission is to educate students in the fields of advancing tech to become innovators of the future. So when I got my master's in future studies, freshly minted, I went over there and I said, hey, you need a futures course at the undergraduate level for all 1,400 of your students. I'll set it up for you. And so that's what we did. And it was called Foresight Development. We did it in 2007. Future Studies Education and Personal Foresight Skills Practice. So people had to take Strengths Finder. They had to learn getting things done, you know, the Allen system, so that you can plan your tomorrow. If you can't plan the next 10 hours, you're not going to be able to plan your career, right? So we mixed together these personal foresight and these global foresight things in this beautiful course that all the students have to take. And now, fortunately, I'm helping them. I'm the program champion for their new Masters in Emerging Technologies. People know what Singularity University is? Okay, this is very similar in the sense, but this is what would happen before. Hopefully, we'll be feeding people into the postdoc opportunities that all the postdocs that go into Singularity University, right? We're getting all these masters excited about accelerating change. I believe we need lots and lots of these kinds of programs around the world. There's 15 masters or PhDs in foresight only in the world right now, 3 in the United States. I got my master's in one of the 3 in Houston. I think there should be 200, 300, 400 of these so that we have hundreds of students graduating every year who are accel-aware. What does accel-aware mean? We'll get to that. So we want to classify technology. There's, you remember NVIC Convergence, Nano, Bio, Info, Cogno. Some of the systems theorists that I've read add Socio to that, social technology. And it really improves the category system. And I would say that nanotech and infotech are the trans in humanism. And sociotech, cognitech, and biotech are the humanism. And sociotech and cognitech are the beating heart of transhumanism. That's what we really care about the most, as Jimé Cassio would say if you read his article at the bottom. So we have moral responsibilities for all of those kinds of technologies, but in particular, Socio and Cogno are what we really care about. Now, tech isn't the only thing in the world. So STEEP is what you learn in your foresight courses: sociology, or society, technology, environment, economics, and politics. Those are the 5 boxes you're supposed to put all your scans into. Well, if you look a little closer, you realize, STEEPS is better. We put science in front of technology because it's very different from science, and it enables science, technology, right? So, and then you put society at the end because it's actually the slowest by comparison to science and technology. So STEEPS gives you a kind of a fastest first model for for a good set of boxes for where you put all your scans, right? So it's something great to teach your masters or your undergrad students, or to use yourself if you're setting up a wiki for cool articles that you're picking up, right? Well, STEEPS isn't enough. You have to go to STEEPSOP, okay? Because society, you got to break down into big society, culture, media, education, religion, art, etc. Mid-level society, all the organizational dialogues, any cool case studies you learn about some new company, you put into the org box, right? And then small society, which is personal. Relationships, you know, family, all the things, longevity, all the things you care about, right? Health. Okay. And so now you can see the whole thing is snisk beeps up. It's this kind of combination of a sneeze and like R2D2 or something, right? Snisk beeps up. Okay, beeps up. So there's your 12 category boxes for a really balanced look at the things that really matter in the future. This is the one I use. This is the one we teach my students. So let's go back to NISP, the sneeze, a little more closely. Okay, the technology, the 5 tech categories, right? So Nano is the one that we start our students off with because Nano's everything. Nano's the fastest, most powerful, most amazing thing. I could tell you stories the next hour about crazy nanotech advances. One guy in a lab, or gal, coming up with a discovery that will create a 6 order of magnitude increase in efficiency from day 1 to day 2. 6 or 10 million times increase in efficiency in micro lasers, or in creating buckyball, 35 times increase just last month for this buckyball fuel cell catalyst device that it's within 10% of the efficiency of platinum and palladium fuel cells, and it's iron inside of an iron catalyst inside of a buckyball, or a pearlized iron. Actually, it's very similar. 35 times increase. One person figured that out, stumbled into it. You never get those kinds of increases in the big space, in the social space. Somebody comes up with a new business model, maybe you get 3 times increase. 300%, oh nice, let's buy stock in that company. People frigging around in the nano space, 1 million times increase. 10,000, 100,000 times increase. 10 to the 5th. Unbelievable. Nano is what's driving everything. It's what's behind Moore's law, Kreider's law, Moore's law, every law you've ever heard of these accelerating technology capacities, it's all because of nano. So I tell my students, that's where we put all of our macro tech. Anything you care about in energy, right? Nuclear power, ever heard of thorium nuclear reactors? Yes. Completely non-weaponizable, the whole reactor sequence, right? It's a beautiful piece of nanotechnology. We could be applying that today if we really cared about it, if we had a lot more engineers in the political space, right? Because it's a beautiful, non-weaponizable way to just get tremendous amount of energy with very little investment. Safely, the weaponization problem, that's the one problem that's been the non-starter, right? It's gone now with the thorium, right? Nano's always figuring out amazing new things like that. So all your macro engineering stories, you got to tell them from the perspective of nano. What's the nano that makes that macro engineering advance so fast? Then you have infotech, all the stuff we talk about AI, right? Then you have sociotech. This is all the intelligence amplification things. Any technology you and I use that gives us quantifiable positive sum benefits. This thing I'm wearing right here today is a piece of sociotech. If I didn't have clothes on, everybody in this room, if I had you all in fMRIs, your brains would light up like Christmas trees if I took my clothes off, right? Why? We don't know. There's all this deep, layer, primal reptilian stuff in there. So we wear these funny little clothes, and it just shuts all that crap off, and it lets all of our higher cognitive functions come out, right? It's a beautiful piece of technology, clothing, right? Oh, is clothing optional? You can have that, but in many environments, you need this. This is a nice little, it's oil, just like a deodorant would be. If I didn't have deodorant on today, you'd do the same thing, right? And there's all kinds of social technologies, right? And we're going to talk about 3 of them in this talk, right? Cognotech, the things to do with the mind, and biotech, the things to do with the body, right? These are the 5 boxes that I have my students use. And we got to be aware of NIB, okay? Our transhumanist community has a historical bias. I'm one of them. I love the transhumanists. I am one, right? We have a historical bias to tell these 3 stories, and we tell them a little too far out in the future, right? We get a little too flying car future with regard to them. Can't have flying car future is a future that you tell, where's my flying car future boy? Ever heard that? Right? Well, the thing is, you can't have your flying car until you have your robocars, because that's 2D automated navigation and a slow speed, and it's much easier to solve that computationally than 3D and high speed, right? So if you don't, there's a convergence hierarchy for these things. And if you have a model that you can have robocars in 2030, you can't have flying cars until after that, right? If you understand that, then you get then you get a convergence hierarchy. Then you get more intelligent about the stories you tell about the future. Okay, and so for nanotech, infotech, and biotech, we often go flying car on it. We go to the awesome stuff right away: the assemblers, the nanobots, the nanofabbers, the general AI, genetic engineering, neuropharm, and longevity past 120. I think all 5 of those, or 6, whatever they are, they're a little too far out. They're great things. We should be talking about them now. We should be putting money in long bets, as they call them, toward those things. But we also need to be able to talk eloquently about the things that are right next door, the ones that are going to happen in the next 5 years, right? Maybe 10. Okay. So another thing that I think we need to talk about when we look at the future is these 4 stories of change. Okay, and my students we really spend a lot of time on this, right? As you can see here, we have an S curve, right? We have a B curve, which is this curve here. This is the curve you and I are on, right? We have a decline and collapse right after sexual maturity. Okay, okay, and then we have another steeper S curve, which is also known as a J curve, isn't it? Right? This is the beginning of one, transformative. As transhumanists, we're all about the red. We love thinking about transformation, but we ought to tell all the other stories well, too. Right? And by the way, the right wing and the left wing folks, they are on the S curve, and they split it completely differently, right? The right wingers are all about continuation on economics, right? Freedom and limits and discipline on the social side. And the left wingers are limits and discipline on the economic side. I want my guaranteed wage. I want my, no foreign competition. And on the social side, give me anything I can get, right? Because I want freedom. Right? Isn't that fascinating? It shows you how valuable those 2 dialogues are. They're not going to go away. They're not going to go away because they map to these basic dynamics that we all have, right? And then you also got to remember the downwinger. The downwinger is important. There's certain things where the wheels are going to come off in the next few years. You got to know what those things are and be able to tell those stories well. Okay, right? Are you accel-aware? That's a key concept, right? Acceleration aware. Right? We coined that term, I don't know, 5 years ago. I hope you guys start using it. And whenever I hear it, it's like, ooh, I feel so good. give me a penny, right? Okay. What does that mean? And accelerative is another beautiful adjective, right? Is that an accelerative policy? Does it really frickin' realize how advanced these technologies are going to be? Anybody who talks about Social Security being bankrupt in 2060, who doesn't also say robots are going to be wiping your ass in 2060, okay, in the same breath, that's not accelerative, okay? That's not accel-aware. Okay? Those people don't recognize the power of accelerating technologies and all the changes that are going to happen in the world because of those. Okay? The physicist, the crazy physicist, this is my crazy physicist slide, who really sees this is Eric Chason. Look, he's a J curve for the world, right there, for the universe. He has a J curve for universal complexity increase. This is a curve that tells you that the Pentium chip is 6 orders of magnitude faster in its rate of learning than you and I are. That's what it tells you. See the 10 to the 5th in the human brains and the 10 to the 11th in the Pentium? Okay? 10 million times faster in its marginal rate of learning. That's not saying structurally it's a million times more complex than you. That's saying its marginal rate of improvement of its intelligence is 6 million times faster than yours. You and I think at 100 miles an hour, these things think at the speed of light, right? That's 7 million-fold difference, right? So that means 50 years, whatever, 60. Kurzweil, John Wesley says 2130. Who knows? Somewhere pretty soon, real soon now, you're going to see some big changes. All right. And look here, world economic performance. Here's another one of those things, right? This is not an exponential. They say we live in exponential times. They got that wrong, don't they? This is a hyper-exponential. There's a freaking wall. Look, right there. 1850, curve. Look at the knee of the curve right there. This is not an exponential, doesn't have a knee in it. It looks the same no matter where you look at it, right? This is a hyper-exponential, and this is what GDP is doing because you and I are riding this boat, right, of this accelerating technical productivity. Who's accel-aware? Kevin Kelly's accel-aware. Check out his book, Out of Control. That's a fantastic book. His new book, What Technology Wants, coming out next year. This curve, he's going to have this curve in there. I introduced him to it in 2001. He blew him away. Okay, he's, of course. I got to put that in my book. Okay, so there's going to be some serious people talking about these issues, right? And he's got a beautiful blog that gives you pieces of the book. Okay. Now the bad news. Okay. Unfortunately, the general scientific community isn't willing to talk about accelerating complexification yet. Okay. The closest we get is what Santa Fe Institute set up this year called the Performance Curve Database. And if anybody has any extra cash on hand, I recommend you write a little small check to Santa Fe Institute because they've only got 2 or 3 people working on this. And it's a beautiful open access online database of all those tombstone curves. You know, Moore's law, Kreider's law, Nishimura's law, Cooper's law of wireless bandwidth, Poor's law of network node density. Alex talks about IPv6, right? There are enough network nodes that everything's going to have a network address. Well, Robert Poor at MIT actually calculated out that curve. How many of these, you know, IP addresses are there? It's another one of those laws, okay? You know, your pen's going to have an internet address in 2030, right? Local positioning systems, they are coming soon. Not GPS, LPS. That's going to be huge new social opportunities for us, okay? And these guys are studying all those curves. And the beautiful thing about that is once you have those curves, you can start looking for those convergences we talked about earlier, you know, and say, oh yeah, flying cars, but robocars first, because that's an easier convergence, okay? Why is accelerating change ignored other than these performance curves by the scientific community? I think it's because it looks too much like progress, which is a nasty word in science, okay? And the reason progress is a no-no today in science is because we don't have a universal theory of values or complexity yet, okay? And it looks also suspiciously like complexity development, not complexity evolution. Remember Stephen Jay Gould, in evolution you can't predict, right? It's completely random. Fish can go into the cave and lose its eyes, or go into a shark and lose its gut, everything but its gut, become a remora. There's no complexity vector for evolution, but development has a complexity vector, right? You went from a seed to this. That's a complexity vector. The universe may be going from a seed, a Big Bang, to this. Okay, that's a complexity vector. So you have to use a word, a naughty word, development, right? And to put those together, you use a word called evolutionary development. And that's the idea that most of what change we see is evolutionary, but there's this subset of change that's developmental and predictable, like the classical mechanics, Newton's laws, like the second law of thermodynamics. I can predict there's going to be more entropy in the universe, right? There it is, okay? And so there's pieces that are predictable and developmental, and there's a bunch of it that's not. And we want to understand the difference between the two. I've got this article on the web if you want to read it, 50-page outline of these ideas. So for the science folks in the room, this is what the phase space looks like, okay, if this model's true. All the stuff that you see that's flat, those are the evolutionary search landscapes. And all the little narrow pipes, those are developmental portals. And that means all the marbles banging around on the landscapes can do it totally randomly and contingently. You can't predict what's going on. But a whole bunch of those marbles are going to go through some of those portal pathways, and you can predict that. That's the developmental part. See the difference? Right. What are a couple of good examples? This is the very best example, carbon chemistry. Back in the 80s, I remember reading astrobiologists saying we might have boron, silicon, or carbon-based life forms on other planets. Have you noticed how nobody talks about boron and silicon anymore? It's because we understand the quantum mechanics well enough to know that carbon's the one, baby. See that periodic table right there? See carbon up there? Once you get carbon, once the stars have manufactured enough carbon around enough planets, that's the portal pathway. They all drop through that to create the next level of chemical complexity. You can't make long-chain Lego blocks type things that can break apart and pull back together, evolve, and develop with anything in liquid phase with anything other than carbon. It's fascinating. It looks like the whole system's random all the way up to that, and then it's got to go through that hole. I'll give you one more. Life. We are at the edge now of being able to say, I can't believe I'm saying this, lipids and RNA may be the only way for organic chemistry to make cells. You'll believe me, read those references at the bottom of that thing right there. We know how to make, in primitive Earth conditions, 2 of the 4 nucleobases for RNA now. We know how to actually grow them right out. They just pop right out. Like, remember the Urey-Miller experiments, popping out the amino acids? We can do this now for RNA. Okay, and lipids we've always known. They can always replicate themselves, like soap bubbles. They're very good at that. But why RNA? It's the only known molecule. We know about 10 million molecular species now, guys. We got a lot in the catalog. This is the only one we know that can replicate itself and that can catalyze protein production. And that's what your transfer RNA in your body does. Right? That's why the RNA world hypothesis is still around, right? Carl Woese's hypothesis. It's probably the one, right? Because this is the only one. Now, what if this is the only molecule out there of that whole 10 million species that we know, right? Of all those 10 million, we don't know any other that can do this, replicate itself and make Lego blocks. So it can take its 2D code and turn it into 3D structure. That could be another portal pathway. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, on every other planet that's life-supporting, they're going to have lipids, RNA, and proteins. They're not going to have DNA, because we know multiple ways to create stable nucleobases, right, besides DNA. But they're all going to have to start with RNA, lipid, and protein. Isn't that crazy? Could be true. If it's true, there's going to be maybe more and more of these stacked in. Science. Is science a portal pathway? I think it is, right? Are computers a portal pathway? Is moving from bio to, from chemo to bio to cyber a hierarchy that we have to go through? I think it might be. And I think we need to seriously talk about that and get some scientists studying this stuff, right? Is a superorganism a portal pathway? Here's E.O. Wilson's new book. You seen this thing? It's incredible, right? Why is only 2% of all the insects are social species, and they weigh more than the mass of all the other 900,000 insect species combined? They've completely dominated the planet, haven't they? And that's what we're doing. We are becoming a superorganism. There's Greg Stock's MetaMan right there. That's what we're doing. The connective tissue of our technology is turning us into a eusocial organism, just like those guys. They dominate the insect world. We dominate the mammalian world. Unfortunately, we're extincting other mammal species the way the social insects are extincting other other solitary insect species. It's amazing. Teilhard de Chardin saw this best in 1945 when he talked about the finite sphericity of the planet and the accelerating linkage density of all the electronic actors. And guess what? Put those two together. Accelerating linkage density and finite sphericity, that's a phase transition. That's physics, man. It's a singularity. Woo! I got to use that word. Right? That's crazy. Is that what we're doing? We're planetizing the planet? I think so. How are we doing it? With this thing we call the metaverse. Okay? Neil Stephenson talked about it in 1992, Snow Crash, right? Virtual and digital intimately pervade, encapsulate, and ultimately surpass physical reality. Life simulates twice and cuts once. We run simulations all the time, and we do a little bit of action. That's how we work. Simulation, baby. Our computers are rapidly learning to do the same. And that's what the metaverse is. All these tools we see here, that's the story of human intelligence amplification, IA, more than of AI. Okay? And here is the developmental hierarchy I would suggest you think about. Web 1.0 was read-write, or read-only, or read-mainly is a better way of describing it. Email and a little bit of text response, just a little bit of, I want to speak. Right? Now we're in Web 2.0. We can read, write, and play. So now we have a participatory web. Isn't that cool? It's not semantic yet, but it's participatory. Yay! We're in Metaverse 1.0, just about to tip to 2.0, the semantic web. We're going to have crazy stuff called like Cybertwins and Lobby Twins. I'll get to those in a second, okay? Web 4.0 is the stuff that all the crazy, wonderful futurists, flying car futurists, I'm one of those too, love to talk about, and that's the intelligent web. That's the social singularity, planetization, global brain, neural user interface, meta-thinking. The planet has a meta-thinking layer on top of our own layer, right, running in parallel. And the concept of meta-humanity, right, okay? Pioneer, and so if you want to make this thing happen, you got to be a pioneer. Pioneers take arrows in their backs, right? And that's where we are. We're making all these experiments with these Web 2.0 technologies right now, trying to push them toward Web 3.0. All this cool wearable web stuff that's just on the verge of popping out. We have a conversational interface that I argued in this article in 2003. By 2019, we're going to be speaking 10-word sentences to Google. You just follow this curve. We're on this curve right now. Average query length to Google, over 5 words now. Did you know that? Average. Because of all those technical questions people ask. Google's really deep for technical stuff, right? When is that going to turn into a pigeon grammar? Soon, baby. Okay? Soon. Post-2020, that's the symbiotic age. That's a world where you have coevolution between your saturating humans and our slow-switching brains and this accelerating technology, right? Computer speaks our language. We're going to feel naked like I feel naked without this stuff. I'm going to feel naked without my cyber twin in that world, okay? Real soon now. How do I know your computer's got to have a face? Your robo-kitchen, your car, everything that you talk to, your software you're learning how to use. How do you know it's got to have a face in that world? Because you have all this nonverbal communication that goes in parallel with your verbal. It's more efficient. I don't want my cyber twin to go like this when it understands me, or go like this when it doesn't, or go like this when I need to be waken up, you know, or made happy, you know, right? I'm going to want that, right? I just stuck a face. I've grafted a face onto the emerging web right there, haven't I? okay? And guess what? That thing's going to be capturing your personality. Everything you say, care about, think about, life logging, right? There it is, okay? Technology is becoming organic, nature is becoming technologic. This is a world where you have a cyber twin or a digital you. You're asleep, you're too busy. I'm going to be talking to your cyber twin trying to get through, and it's going to be asking me some simple questions to make sure I'm not a telemarketer, right? Okay? Well, you know, when you wake up the next morning, you can have all these possible things to do that your cyber twin kind of figured out for you on the social networks of 2020 or 2015, hopefully, 2020, right? Okay? And when your mom dies in 2050, your digital mom's going to be 50% her. You're not going to go to Tombstone to grieve. You're going to fire up Cyber Mom. Think about that. You get all of her crazy stories or attitude. Yeah, shut up, right? Okay. No. Okay. Right? When your best friend dies in 2080, your digital best friend is 80% him. Remember we had that plastination talk yesterday? Somebody talked about plastinating the brain. Imagine a world where people realize, geez, I could plastinate a brain for 10,000 bucks. I could plug all that knowledge into my cyber twin. I'd make a smarter cyber twin. Smarter cyber granny. Granny's going to die. Come on, Granny, here. We'll put you on the ground, just like we do now, but instead of embalming, we're going to plastinate you. Think about that world. That's a very different world, where people really care about their hard drive, right? And by the way, the whole surface, six layers deep is all you really got to get. The cortex, we can already plastinate that right now. That's how we make those little bugs that you get that are paperweights, right? That's low-tech plastination. We could do this today for the cortex, right? It's amazing. Okay? How do you go from a cyber twin to a cyber self? I'm going to try and blow your mind with this slide, okay? This woman, Laura Colgan, she should be at the next H+ next year, okay? You should bring her out here, okay? She could get a Nobel Prize for this. She should get a Nobel Prize for this if this turns out to be true. This is insane, okay? How many people have heard of neural synchronization? Yeah, and gamma oscillations and things like that, phase locked, right? So this is so weird you're not going to believe it, but it's true. Or it looks like it's true. Let's be serious. Okay, this is a Nature publication, all right? Neurons have these phase-synced oscillations of populations. There's a bunch of people here that think that that's the substrate for our highest order perception, attention, and consciousness. They think this is the substrate in which consciousness is occurring. Okay? Neural synchronization of these populations of neurons. This woman proved that there's these switches in rat hippocampus that allow two different types of synchronization to pass two different types of information from the hippocampus to the entorhinal cortex, which is an area of the cortex really close to the hippocampus. Okay? And the long-term future of a symbiont in this world, right, of your digital twin, is you don't just have a neural user interface, so you've got this prosthetic, brain chip that's allowing you to have these pieces of you outside that you're thinking, doing thinking for you. You actually have oscillations. You have phased oscillations with these artificial neurons that are next to your brain. You know what that means? That means you're, as Daniel Dennett would say, your center of narrative gravity, your consciousness, you can shift it now from the biological to the electronic and back. You actually have got the substrate of consciousness now. You are actually in both places. Just like you can go below the top of your head right down, look on the top of your head right now, you're looking at me, right? Your consciousness is going to go into that thing too, and here, and up there. And in that kind of a world, if your bio-self dies, your cyber self is going to look at that and say, it's not going to feel like death. It's going to feel like just growth, right? Uninterrupted consciousness, all right? So, we're in the Datacosm now, cheap data on the web. In the cyber twin world, we're going to be in the Valuecosm. This is a world where all of our values are publicly expressed to the web. All the people we care about, all the intentional communities we want to create, it's going to be so easy in a world where we can speak to the web to find people who have those. Transhumanist communities can get so much stronger. The Amish can get so much stronger. All these subcultures are going to get so much stronger because they're going to find other people, and then those experiments are going to get played out so much better, right? That's the Valuecosm. Now, picture a world, there's a lot of potential for abuse, but picture the power of that world and the cyber twin post-2020, the subculture diversity, the digital divide goes away, powerful actors are finally accountable. If Dow Chemical does something I don't like and I want to boycott Dow and I walk into a supermarket today, good luck. But if I talk to my cyber twin and I say, listen, I want you to boycott those SOBs because they bought Union Carbide. Remember the Bhopal disaster? The largest single technological disaster of the 20th century? Still hasn't been cleaned up. Dow owns Union Carbide. If you're pissed off about that and you'd like to boycott Dow until they finally clean that up, you tell your cyber twin. Tell your Cybertwin, I want you to go to the fossil fuel filler-upper that's the most environmentally sustainable, off of my favorite NGO's ratings. You see how all that stuff changes now? We have that power again, finally. We really have lobby twins that are lobbying for our values in that world. Very different world. All right? And what's a Symbiont network? Last one. Imagine a Metaverse 2.0 world. You got lifelogs, pervasive broadband connectivity. Now 150 of our most cognitively diverse friends, remember the Dunbar number, right? Malcolm Gladwell, are permissioned into our live streams 24/7. You know, the kids growing up with these 150, there's going to be, you know, future lawyers, future doctors, future this and that, all nice cognitively diverse group. They got a round-robin system that keeps everybody who asks questions contributing. You can't keep asking. You have to contribute to ask more, right? So there's no free rider. You have a rapid group learning. Symbionts start to outperform unconnected individuals in that world. Kids in that world are not going to remember something that happened to them, whether it happened to them or someone else in their symbiont. That's called the symbiont moment, because they had that real-time stream coming in from that friend, right? They're going to feel like they're trans-living. Think about the connectivity and the powerful political benefits that can come out of this level of interactivity. Okay. What are the bottlenecks? Dean Kamen says, as fast as tech moves, people move at the same slow, cautious pace as they always did. Okay. And if you want to create a global innovation economy, should we be doubling the speed of computers or doubling the numbers of people who have access to information? That's the IA model, isn't it? Right? Doubling the educational content and open access databases, sophistication of free cloud-based education systems, funded competitions for new ideas and products, increasing the numbers of immigrant and endemic scientists, engineers, and students, critical, rational, normative thinking programs. These are the kinds of things that we can do, right? By thinking of the human as part of that Metaverse 2.0. We're the critical part of it. It's the largest social construction project we've ever been engaged in, is building this new Metaverse 2.0, right? The last thing I'd like to mention is we should network more with the Foresight affinity groups, WFS, WFSF. We have a social network called Fern. And for those of you who really want to network, I challenge you to come with us to Burning Man for a week in the desert. Go to futurecamp.ning.com and if you want to be invited, right? Come out. We spend a week out there talking about this kind of stuff with the burners. Now that's enough time for us to get our stories really up there, isn't it? Right? So that's it. Thanks, guys.